literacy in the profession.
Good evening, it is 7:30 in the evening in India and we are back again with our spotlight on G20. On the show today, we take a deep dive into the labour and employment challenges facing particularly the developing world and which are being deliberated upon at the first G20 Employment Working Group meeting in Jodhpur. Also get a taste of Indian millets and glimpses from the Heritage Walk in Jodhpur and yoga sessions to relax delegates. We asked the International Labour Organization, which works alongside the G20 on labour and employment issues, about India's labour and employment priorities under G20 and the progress made in Jaipur. Also on the show, updates from the first G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group meeting in Guwahati. I'm Manu Bhattacharya. First up, the top stories. Second day of the first Employment Working Group meeting concludes in Jodhpur. Discussions take place on addressing global skill gaps and supporting gig and platform economy. Union Jal Shakti Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat addresses the opening session of the day, calls for meaningful progress towards creating more opportunities for decent work and inclusive growth. G20 delegates participate in a heritage walk through the charming narrow streets of the old city of Jodhpur and savour the cultural heritage of Rajasthan. First G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group meeting concludes in Guwahati. Discussions take place on mechanisms for mobilizing timely and adequate resources for climate finance, enabling finance for SDGs and capacity building for financing sustainable development. Delegates agree to develop a technical assistance action plan to help nations come up with workforce skilled in sustainable finance. Guwahati gears up for the Youth 20 Summit Inception meeting from 6th to 8th February. Union Youth Affairs Secretary says under Y20 discussions will be organized across India to consult the youth of India on ideas for a better tomorrow. Day 2 of the ongoing G20 Employment Working Group meeting in Jodhpur deliberated upon issues of addressing global skills gaps and ensuring sustainable financing for social security. DD India's correspondent Amritpal Singh reports from Jodhpur on what transpired at the meeting on Friday.
On day 2, the 3-day G20 Employment Working Group meeting currently in Jodhpur extensively discussed issues related to global skills gap, gig and platform economy and social security. Speaking at the opening session, Union Minister for Jal Shakti, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, called upon the international community to strive together to make meaningful progress in creating more opportunities for decent work and inclusive growth for all people.
Are not only here to talk about problems, but to find solutions that will improve the lives of people around the world. We have gathered some of the most talented and knowledgeable experts on these matters, and I am confident that together we can make real progress in addressing the issues that are so important to the economic and social well-being of our nation.
The Employment Working Group is focusing on the key areas of global skills gaps, gig and platform economy and social protection, along with sustainable financing of social security.
It's very good to have these discussions, but I also get from the discussions today that we have many different frameworks in many countries. It's quite complex, so I think we need a step-by-step approach to see what kind of lessons we can learn and also what kind of quick fix first solutions we can try out and then improve the system while we go along.
Each and every country has to work it out at their own level and then discuss collectively with other countries and see how best they can work on that issue, because today there is that issue of workers going from one country to work in another country, and if one qualification is not accepted internationally in other countries, but then it will be difficult for non-expatriates to work in other countries with the same qualifications and skills which may not be acceptable.
Apart from the substantive discussions, the delegates broke into a small yoga session during a round of negotiations. They could be seen enjoying the stretching and breathing exercises in the midst of hectic deliberations.
We do sit a lot in these meetings, and I think we have to stay sharp and our minds have to stay focused, and if we can use the well-being techniques that you have here in India to do that, then that's fantastic.
The day, which started with a heritage walk through the alleys of Jodhpur, ended with an excursion to the historic Mehrangarh Fort, followed by a cultural evening.
Apart from soaking in the colourful culture, the exotic locales and the rich cuisine of Marwar, these G20 delegates are trying hard at this meeting to explore strategies to deal with the complex challenges of employment and labour, of the global skills gap that stares us in the face today. With cameraman YK Loknath, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Jodhpur.
Let's get perspective now. Richard Sammons, Director Research with the International Labour Organization, is joining us from Jodhpur. Richard, welcome to India at G20 and thank you so much for taking out your time. At the very outset, I wish to ask you, how is the ILO working with India during India's G20 presidency on labour welfare? Because I know for a fact that the International Labour Organization closely works with the G20 on labour welfare.
Yes, indeed, and it's a pleasure to be here in India in support of your government and its very important presidency. We, as an international organization specializing on international labor and social security issues, are providing analytical support to your government and the two Troika partners, Indonesia and Brazil. In this regard, we prepared a number of technical papers that have, the first two of which have been discussed so far already in this meeting. We also try to provide a little bit of historical and institutional continuity because we've been present supporting previous G20 presidencies and provide useful advice in that regard. And indeed, we'll be providing a little bit of convening support because the third Employment Working Group meeting will be in Geneva at our International Labor Conference in early June. And that just is a convenient time for your government to pull together the members of this group.
So this will do a lot of groundwork other than for G20. How do you see the three priorities identified by India? One is addressing global skill gaps. The second one is extending social security to gig and platform economy workers which are not covered by social security, and ensuring that there is sustainable finance for social security. And how is the ILO contributing to each of them?
Well, first, I'd say the three priorities chosen by your government are very appropriate ones. Skills mismatches are plaguing many economies around the world, and social protection is a right. People have a right to Social Security. This goes back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, part of the formation of the UN system. And so the big challenge, though, is implementing these things, narrowing those gaps, providing that social protection, irrespective of what type of a job a person has. And so we think these are logical extensions of previous G20 pronouncements and work in the area. There are major challenges that affect millions of people in both respects. And they both contribute to both economic growth and broader improvement in living standards. And, you know, you need both in an economy. You've got to be able to deliver on both growth and broad-based progress in living standard inclusion. So I think these are very well chosen topics indeed.
Fair enough. Richard, also, let's come to specific deliverables now. India is attempting to drive consensus among G20 countries on a skills harmonization framework and also on mutual recognition of skills and qualifications. How effective can these be for seamless movement of workers across countries, considering that there are several changes in the demography of various countries that are taking place? There are populations that are urging in several countries, and a country like India, which has a lot of young people, would want to send its people, and they would also want to receive skilled workforce from a country like India. So how does this process really help seamless movement of workers?
Well, everyone has an interest in trying to get a better understanding and real-time understanding of what those gaps are and have more of a common terminology about them. So in principle, this type of an analytical exercise in trying to get a more common approach could be useful in this regard. But we have to bear in mind that at the end of the day, agreeing to expand the importation of labor, whether physically or virtually, is ultimately a political decision. It's a decision that governments need to make, and therefore it has to have political support and interest. And you know, the reality is that it may be difficult given how sensitive migration and jobs are in various countries. It may be difficult in a multilateral setting to get an agreement on exactly the same approach. However, by having a common taxonomy and a common set of indicators and understanding what the problem is, that will enable bilateral, regional, even sectoral frameworks for facilitating these flows. So I think we need to be realistic about this, but I do think that there is a lot of progress that can be made and that can have a practical impact.
Okay. Also, 4 billion people around the world are yet to be covered by any form of social security. How can developing countries enhance statistical capabilities and capacities and methodologies to better capture emerging forms of work, including in the gig and platform economy? And how can a sustainable finance be mobilized so that social protection is universalized? That covers the whole gamut of the issues, in fact, which are under discussion. Yeah.
This is a big issue because there's still a very large financing gap in many, many countries around the world. And, you know, your country's been making some very, very solid progress in this regard. It must be recognized and been very creative about it as well. And your country's investment in the digital infrastructure is a great enabler of reaching more and more workers who are in the informal economy or in sometimes what we call non-standard work. You know, our sense is, as we've done the analysis on this, is that, you know, there are multiple pathways to providing the necessary financing. And it probably makes sense for countries to try to mix together both social contributions, what people contribute and their employers contribute, with, to some extent, tax-based financing. And also, you know, efforts by companies themselves in this regard. And what we're trying to do is provide a better understanding of the different experiences in this regard, and help people understand what levers you can pull, and thereby to help countries understand how best to close their gaps.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Richard, for sharing your views with us. There is a long roadmap ahead, like you said in your first answer. We're just looking forward that under this particular employment working group meeting in India, there are a lot of deliverables and a lot of progress is made going forward. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, productive discussions are going on in Jodhpur on ways to extend social security to gig and platform workers. You just heard Richard also talk about it. But do you know what is a gig and platform economy and about India's efforts towards supporting it? This video explains it all.
The world came to a standstill in 2020. Markets, offices, everything was shut. Everything took small steps to resume activity. What was sprinting ahead was the gig and platform economy. Gig and platform work is now much in demand, thanks to the growing consumer preferences and changing lifestyles aided by the technology. As per ILO, digital platforms globally generated revenue worth $52 billion in the year 2019. And are set to grow with total investments worth $119 billion as of 2021. This rising economy provides significant advantage to workers as they increase their income streams, work from home, and exercise job flexibility. While businesses, especially MSMEs, get higher productivity, wider market reach, and access to global workforce. This unconventional model of work has new challenges. Workers' classification, irregular availability of work, concerns regarding safety, health, data privacy, and data security, and most importantly, inadequate social protection. Clearly, a lot needs to be done for these workers. Therefore, the Government of India has enacted the Code on Social Security 2020. This will achieve the goal of universalizing social security. The code provides for constitution of a social security fund, which will provide several benefits to these workers. Gig and platform workers are also being registered under eShram, a flagship initiative to create a national database of unorganized workers. Not just this, for vehicle aggregators in the country, we have issued new licensing guidelines. They will have to provide health insurance and term insurance to all drivers. Ensure the daily driving limit of 12 hours a day for drivers. And make sure that the driver gets at least the 80% of the total fare charged for a ride. However, there is a long way to go, and we need to work together to move faster. This year, the G20 Employment Working Group will deliberate on ways to extend social security to such workers. After all, gig and platform economy is the next big step towards Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future.
A Millet Village has been established in Jodhpur where rural women could be seen grinding millets and preparing millets laddus and other delicacies for G20 delegates. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh gets us his ground report from Jodhpur.
In line with the Prime Minister's idea of using Indian presidency of G20 to promote the millets, Jodhpur has come up with this novel idea of a millet village. What they've tried to do is they've tried to recreate the village settings for the delegates of the employment working group, which is taking place here in Jodhpur, to familiarize them, one, with millets as food, and also to show the rural culture of Jodhpur and the Marwar region, and of course of Rajasthan.
Year of Millet has been announced this year, year 2023. Millet for Rajasthan and especially for the Jodhpur province, it used to be the part of life. Because of the scarcity of rains, our people used to grow millet, eat millet, consume millet, and everything is out of millet, and it is super nutritious foods. It has been considered. So Honorable Prime Minister is continuously recommending and hailing the people to consume more and more millets. Ministry of Agriculture is also promoting different varieties of millets, and in the time which are coming, and because of the impacts of the climate change which is happening, now it has become necessary to grow millets and consume more and more millets.
Glorious experience this evening, a beautiful setting, a fabulous cultural performance with singing and dancing, and now I'm learning a little bit about millet. I think millet offers a lot of promise, both in terms of nutrition and in terms of the environment. So very exciting to see the focus on millet in 2023.
I think just overwhelmed with everything that we've experienced tonight, the culture, including this. This has really just been fantastic.
This is how millets are transported traditionally from the farm, and the traditional women folk here then ground them at their homes using these grounding sticks. Once the flour is made, it's taken and it is being cooked on firewood. The roti of pearl millet or bajra is being made. The idea is to give a taste of the diverse culture of India and the distinct local culture, the rural culture of the Marwar region to also promote millets. Here they're grounding chutney as it's done on the stone in the traditional way. So using culture and promoting the idea of millets. With cameraman YK Loknath, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Jodhpur.
A treat to the eyes as well as for the taste buds. Assam, in fact, successfully hosted the first Sustainable Finance Working Group meeting under the G20 finance track with more than 100 delegates and 5 sessions of intense deliberations. The meeting concluded with tangible progress being made towards achieving the goals set by the Indian presidency and laying the broad groundwork for the remaining 3 Sustainable Finance Working Group meetings in the coming months in Udaipur, Mahabalipuram and Varanasi.
The 2-day first Sustainable Finance Working Group meeting concluded in Guwahati on Friday. More than 100 delegates from G20 nations, invitee nations and international organizations like World Bank, IMF and UNDP participated. The Indian presidency had identified 3 key priority areas for the delegates to deliberate on. And on all 3 issues, the Indian proposal got an overwhelming response from the delegates. The first day deliberation were focused on the first 2 issues. Mechanism for mobilization of timely and adequate resources for climate finance, enabling finance for the sustainable development goals. On the second and the last day, there were deliberations on the last topic, capacity building of the ecosystem for financing towards sustainable development. The delegates agreed to develop a technical assistance action plan to help the nation with skilled workforce in sustainable finance. The delegates agreed with the proposal put forth by the Indian presidency and provided valuable inputs to firm up the process. The most tangible takeaway from the 2-day meet is that Indian agenda was widely accepted and delegates were more than comfortable with giving further suggestion as mark of their support. This was the first meeting of the Sustainable Finance Working Group meet. The 3 more are being planned in coming months in Udaipur, Mahabalipuram and Varanasi. Given the progress made in the very first meet, the Indian government is very hopeful that before the leadership summit in September in Delhi, the Sustainable Finance Working Group meet will have achieved the required result. But even the press conference was not over without a reference to the exceptionally warm welcome accorded to all the delegates. The delegates specifically asked the advisors in Finance Ministry to convey their regard in the press conference. Bureau Report, DD India.
That was Ravi Dhiman's report from Guwahati. Meanwhile, G20 delegates at the first Sustainable Finance Working Group meeting learnt about the culture, cuisine and handicrafts of Assam and had an immersive experience at G20 India. Our correspondent Ravi Dhiman talked to them and also on the fantastic reception they received on the Sand Island. Listen in.
The first Sustainable Finance Working Group meet is underway. We have some of the delegates here with us. The deliberations are now almost concluding. Now we are all waiting for the final session to happen. How far the deliberations have gone so far?
Yesterday we had some fruitful discussions. There were 2 sessions. And today we are going to deliberate on how to improve the capacity building and the technical assistance. There has been some panelists talking, and it was really fruitful to see what's going around in the other countries in terms of this capacity building.
This is a very timely discussions because, well, we are experiencing problems with the capacity building and so on. So, especially for emerging markets and developing economies. So, I think, yeah, it's just perfect timing to discuss these things.
What do you think could be the best outcome of these deliberations? Some tangible progress in ensuring the capacity building or the mechanism for ensuring funds are available?
So, as our European colleagues said, that they are preparing some kind of guidance for low and middle-income countries. So, I think this will be one of the best thing to like close this discussion, or maybe just to open one of the great things. Yeah.
There are some deliverables on the agenda. They are like scheduled to July, and then for the Leader Summit, we are going to be preparing some output documents.
There is hope for some tangible progress.
Yes, of course. This is only the beginning.
Only the beginning. Yeah, exactly. Only the beginning. And how about, what's your take on the cultural events that you've been taking?
Yesterday was amazing. Like, it was such a huge island and so many like cultural events. Like, we didn't know that was so much diversity even inside the Assam.
So we were visiting these like little houses. They were introducing us to their culture, and well, thanks again, guys, for hospitality. I couldn't expect like anything like this.
So the delegates also think that there is some tangible progress that will be made on these very challenging issues of sustainable development, of fighting climate change, as the two-day process winds to a conclusion. With camera person Sanjeev Sharma, Ravi Dhiman, DD News, Guwahati.
Under the framework of G20 presidency, Department of Youth Affairs has been entrusted with the responsibility to organize the Youth 20 Summit 2023. Youth 20 is one of the official engagement groups of the G20. The Youth 20 inception meeting is scheduled to be held from the 6th to the 8th of February at Guwahati in Assam. Y20 will provide a platform for the youth to express their perspectives and ideas on G20 priorities. Listen in to Union Secretary, Youth Affairs on it.
India has one of the youngest populations in the world. The youth of the nation is full of energy and innovation, and it shall be the attempt of the Department of Youth Affairs to provide a forum to express that energy in constructive ideas and to engage in dialogue with youth delegates from the G20 countries. In the coming 8 months, we are planning to hold 16 consultations preceding the main Y20 summit, which would be held in August 2023.
Under the Youth 20 Summit 2023, for the next 8 months, there will be consultations on the 5 Y20 themes, along with various discussions in schools, colleges, universities, urban local bodies and professional associations across states in the run-up to the final Y20 summit. Listen in.
5 themes are Future of Work, Industry 4.0, Innovation and 21st Century Skills, Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction, Making Sustainability a Way of Life. The third theme is Peace Building and Reconciliation, Ushering in an Era of No War. The fourth is Shared Future, Youth in Democracy and Governance. And the fifth theme is Health, Well-being and Sports, Agenda for Youth. The focus of activities in each of these meetings is to build a shared vision of youth for good governance and democracy, and in how best to use technology.
And as we end this show, we'll leave you with these stunning visuals. Lose yourself in the energy of Guwahati, just like the G20 delegates did. Namaskar.
Changing world of news. Headlines that you wake up to. News that shapes your day. Stories that matter to you. The latest and most accurate updates. A fresh start to a new day. The Breakfast News, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. on DD India.
Payment fail.